Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. Hey, the unfortunate truth about divorce is that it's just messy and no one ever prepares you to go through it.
And we surely weren't prepared, but in this episode, we share some of the strategies we use to help navigate the emotional and painful process of divorce.
So if you like these videos, please smash the like and subscribe button, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
We talked about coming back to the topic of divorce, and you had mentioned last time we talked about maybe jumping into how we work through it. So, because I think a lot of times that people either haven't been through divorce, it's not just a event. Like it's not just a time and space. It's a long process. So when I think of divorce, it was a month long, right? Actually, it was much longer than that.
I was going to say, yeah.
Emotionally, it's much longer than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean the actual from filing to being final was only a month?
Yeah. So from the time the papers were served until
Yeah.
I felt like maybe it was over and that was months. That was months after the time the judge signed the divorce and it was actually final.
Mine was pretty much a whirlwind. Let's
Yeah.
see. It was October 1st. It was when I got shook
Yeah.
that he didn't know what he wanted, and we basically separated. And then 3 months later, divorce papers were filed, and then a month later, it was done, signed off by a judge.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
To even think that.
24 years undone in 4 months, basically.
You
So
think
it
it was just
wild.
because of the state you were living in?
No, I think it's just because I signed the papers he presented me.
Oh.
I signed off on the way he wanted to split things and all that. I just wanted it over.
I was actually chuckling to myself because I thought, this morning when we knew we would be coming back in the studio talking about divorce, and I had kept you up all night just because I wasn't sleeping, tossing and turning. And I remember waking. I think it was like 6:45. I rolled over and
It was dark, is all I know, and
You
I don't
were-
get out of bed before light.
Yeah, and all I saw was these eyes, like staring a hole right through my soul. And you were like, "You kept me up all night long." I'm thinking, "It's gonna be a great day."
Now I didn't.
Is
hold
this
it
how
ag- I
divorce
didn't
starts?
hold it against you.
This
No,
is how it starts,
we know
people.
relationships are hard.
This is how it starts.
But look, now we're off topic, and I don't know
No,
what we're
it's
talking
just
about.
fun. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy that yours was like a month because the actual I guess the legal
The
legal timeline for me it was I can't remember the date exactly, but I want to say papers were served like in October, right around somewhere in October timeline. I can't remember exactly.
Well, that's ironic. Yours was October. too.
Right. But I do remember that the date that it was legally final was May 5th of the following year. So what's that? 5, 6, 7 months? 7 months. It's crazy to think about that and then then it was all this, and I know we talked a little bit last time where I wanted to go to arbitration.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the same.
Yeah.
And then kind of work through that. And that, while I think the process is fantastic, it takes two people to want to do it that way.
Yeah.
So did you guys do that?
No.
There was no mediation, because they have like an
No.
actual mediator.
Right.
There's people who do this for a living.
No. The papers came to me from his lawyer,
Yeah.
and I signed off on it.
Man, that's crazy. Yeah. I mean, how long did it take? So how long did it take by the time you got the papers to kind of read through them? I mean, did you talk to somebody about it? Did you talk to family? Did you let somebody read over it, or was it just really basic? Like,
I mean, it was basic.
Yeah.
It was pretty basic. Yeah.
wow.
I mean, just the scariest part of it all for me was just the big change that was coming in my life. I didn't know how it would be to be a
Right.
single woman,
Yeah.
a divorced woman, having to find a new home and all the finances, on my own, and navigating that because I didn't deal with the finances before. I don't know. There was just a lot of change, and I don't do well with change.
Yeah.
Well, I'd never had to make a lot of change in my life, I guess, up until then.
Yeah, it's just, and I suppose there's probably so many people out there that just, for every divorce, there's a story, right? And everyone had probably a different experience. I know like I said, I went in thinking, oh, well, mediation's the way to go. And, we'll sit down and we'll talk about how to, split up things and how to set up child care or custody. And
Well, see, mine was a lot easier in that aspect because
That's
my
true.
kids were over 18.
Right.
So there was none of that involved. So it was probably
Yeah,
a little
no,
more
that's a good
cut and
point.
dry than what you had to deal with, for
Yeah,
sure.
yours were 18 and over at that point, right? Yeah, mine were teenagers. But yeah, and I get it. I think I was a little naive in the sense that, well, I just felt like we could handle this as mature adults, and the mediator who does this for a living will help us kind of detail a plan, and we'll put it into action, and it'll all be great. We'll shake hands, give each other a hug, and wish each other well. All right, and yeah, exactly right, right. And it was anything but that. So when that whole process unraveled, and then she told me that she was getting divorced, and then it was like the deer in the headlight. Like, what's this all like? What's this going to look like? So I started talking with friends of mine that had been through it, and the horror stories, and I was like, that's when it was like, oh, this is real. This shit's real.
Yeah, I didn't want any part of that fighting and going back and forth. That's why I just signed off on the original document that he had drawn up with his lawyer.
Right.
And just went with it.
Yeah. Well, I totally can see that point if it was if you had an opportunity to just do that. I think. So I'm kind of a numbers guy and a logical guy. So I started thinking so I started talking to a friend of mine. All right, well, I know attorneys are expensive and they like to draw things out, and they just make a divorce, I think, cost way more than it needs to, right? And so the assets that you want to fairly split, and then you want to be there productive for the kids. I mean, lawyers just eat a shit ton of that up, and I think it's ridiculous. So I was trying to avoid that. And then after having these conversations, they're telling me, oh, you're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for an attorney. So I started doing kind of the back of the napkin math, and I realized, for me, it just didn't seem to really make sense when we added up assets and everything. But the big kicker for me was, in the state that I got divorced, and the age that my kids were, where they were going to be, if I had an attorney and she had an attorney and there was child care, custody issues, then it was going to require them to come into court and be, I guess, interviewed or talked to by the attorneys. And I'm like, that just seemed super traumatic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think no matter what age the kids are, it's traumatic, and especially to have to sit up in front of a judge or lawyers and talk about this would be,
Right.
I wouldn't ever put my kids through that either.
No, and I mean, they had already been. So I remember, like I said, about right around the time that the decision was made to divorce and the papers were filed, this is when I moved out. So I moved out, and that was a whole nother story because I didn't want it to be, I wanted it to be as least traumatic for the kids as possible. And so at the time we lived in a subdivision, and the house we built years and years prior was in the very back of the subdivision in a cul-de-sac. And it just so happened when I was ready to, when this time came up, that house in the very front of the subdivision was, the owners had left and somebody bought it, and it was a rental. So I was like, well, this is great because now I can move in here and rent. The kids can actually walk, or they don't have. Once you put kids in a vehicle and they have to drive somewhere, then it becomes, I think, exponentially more difficult to visit, right? And I wanted to be in their life, and didn't want any of that. I wanted to be there a break.
Well, that couldn't have worked out any better for you, honestly.
I know, it's kind of serendipitous. Yeah.
Yeah.
So so yeah, I moved in there, and so they were able to, Jeff was able to ride the little 4-wheeler, or ride his bikes down there, and so it really did make it better. But yeah, it was still traumatic. So trying to minimize every area of their lives where it was just going to create upheaval. So yeah, I think that. So aside from the whole legal piece and the fact that it costs, like there's a waste of money and resources and assets anytime you involve
but some people
attorneys.
have to
They do
go that route.
They do, yeah.
Unfortunately.
Right. Well, I think it is unfortunate. I think it's, to the degree that people could actually realize that and back to what we said before, if they could realize that the relationship has come to its end, that the season is over, the life cycle's end, and realize, okay, well, now we just have to, let's move on. So how can we do it in the best way, certainly for each party involved and ultimately the kids, if there are kids involved, and minimize damage all the way around. But, just...
I know you're laughing because I just don't have anything to say on this.
Yeah, I get it, because
are so different.
We're so different. But I guess I was segueing away from the fact of the actual mechanical process to, and you had mentioned this last time we talked, was how did we each survive or try to cope through that process? And although yours was short from a legal standpoint, it was still...
I had a lot to think about.
Yeah, well, there were still months after, right? There was that...
there's definitely, even after it's finalized, you're still obviously going through a process, a grieving process and a healing process.
Right. So that's I guess I'd like to hear from you. You were the person that had the proverbial rug ripped out from underneath them, and you had to adjust and move quickly. And so how did you... And you were working full-time in a very, as a nurse in a very high-intensity, high-stress environment. So you had that whole part of your life, and you had kids. So
yeah, for me...
How'd you keep your head on?
I just had to take one day at a time.
Yeah.
Because when I thought too far ahead, I got so overwhelmed. I just couldn't do it. So...
What would that look like?
Well, if you're getting too overwhelmed, you just focus on one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Get it done, whether it's just getting out of bed and cleaning your house for the day, and then worry about tomorrow. Mm-hmm. I know there's people cope in all different ways, but that's what helped me. I got moving, I got more active, which is really good. Kept my mind off the what ifs, what's going to happen, and just kept moving forward.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, as time goes on, you begin to heal.
No, I agree. So do you think that for you, compartmentalizing, like mentally compartmentalizing, is that what works for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's different for everybody.
Right.
I think it's good to be honest and talk about it with your friends and family. Let go of that shame. At first, I was embarrassed. I don't know why I felt so guilty about getting divorced, but I did. And I think it helped me to be open and honest. And the more I talked about it and got it out, instead of holding all these feelings in, really put me on a path of healing.
Yeah, no, I think being able to communicate and being vulnerable, because whether it was me who initiated the divorce or it was you who were surprised by it, there's still a level of mixed emotions of guilt and failure and whatever, all these guilt, right? So, and it's difficult to talk to somebody about it, even if it's somebody that's close. So, yeah, I was thinking, as you were talking, I was thinking there's so many different attributes and dynamics. So I moved from a house that we had built and established and been there for years and years and years, and it was a home, to this empty rental that was it was almost like going back to like a dorm. I moved in, I had a lawn chair, or a rocking chair. I had a cooler, that was my coffee table. I had a lamp. I didn't even have a table to set the lamp on.
Well, I had to move back in with my parents for a little while with 2 adult children. So there's
Yeah,
that. I'm just
right.
kidding, Mom and Dad. They were wonderful.
Right. But I mean, so this whole shift of, I mean, this like drab, it was a house, but it was like an apartment. And all I had was my clothes and my belongings. But it was like I was all the way back to right when I moved into my parents' house when I was 18. And I felt defeated. And I got it, for me, I just got in my head too much. And so that was in this downward spiral.
Now, were you still seeing a counselor at this point?
I was, yeah, and I'm so thankful that that's a really good point. I'm so thankful that I started the process of counseling. I built a relationship with this counselor, and it was part of my routine. So that when that tsunami hit, that was really my only place that I could. I felt that I could just be completely vulnerable. You can't be vulnerable with your kids,
Yeah.
right? As much as
Right.
you'd like to at that age.
Well, and you don't want to drag them into it because emotionally they're going through so much on their own already with the divorce.
Right. So it takes an emotional toll on you. It takes a physical. So what'd you do? So how about did you put time and effort into your physical health, or was that something that
Oh yeah,
you let
'cause I
slide?
never really did before.
Yeah.
But what helped me was to kind of keep moving. So I started jogging and being outside in the sunlight, and just being outside and moving was very therapeutic for me. And I would suggest that to anyone. You start feeling better about yourself. You're out there. You're getting sunlight.
Yeah.
So yeah, it made a big impact.
Was there any crutch? And the way I say crutch, I mean, sometimes we do things to try to alleviate the pain, right? Whether it's alcohol or rebound affairs or drugs or smoking. I mean, there's a number of things that people use to try to deaden the pain.
Right.
Was there anything?
I mean, at one point I thought I need an antidepressant.
Yeah.
Because I just had never felt like that before, and I could feel myself kind of starting to spiral down. And then I thought, well, let me do some research. I want to know if they're going to prescribe something. I want to know about it, or I want to know what to ask for. Being in the medical field myself. And when I read side effects and stuff, it kind of scared me, and then potential withdrawals and stuff. So I just found, for me, I was able to find other avenues for healing and getting through that tough part. You're tearing up. You're going to make me cry.
No, I mean, it's just, I get it. It's really
And I mean, I definitely think medication is not a bad thing, and it can help people. But when I read about it, just for me, it wasn't going to work. And I was like, okay, put your big girl panties on, and you can get through this without it.
Yeah. And there's such a stigma around the whole medication, right? And even for me, there was too. And I know people said, hey, you should try some, get some, I don't even know the names of them, but antidepressants or whatever. And I had thought about it too, but something inside me said, no, I'd rather lean in. I want to lean into the pain. Because if there's one thing I kind of learned from growing up in a household that was dysfunctional and there was a lot of pain, I saw my dad kind of lean into it as opposed to retreat from it. And I felt like, maybe naively, that I was strong enough mentally so I just wanted to lean into it. But anyway, I've come to learn later that I think a lot of times these antidepressants, they can be a bridge. I think that there's a use for them. It can be a bridge to help get through it. Now, becoming dependent on them, I think, could maybe not be the best thing. So, but yeah, so leaning into the pain, and boy, that's a whole nother conversation just about
there's so
life.
much we could talk about
Right.
around divorce.
Yeah, but I mean, leaning into the pain and just letting it kind of overwhelm you and have its work in you, because we always want to say pain and suffering, those things we want to get away from,
But they're there for a reason.
Exactly.
It helps you process all these things that are going on in life. And even though it's hard, it's not always a bad thing to feel that and go through it.
Yeah, it's so counterintuitive, isn't it? Because the things that hurt the most, whether mentally, emotionally, or physically, we want to run from.
Yeah.
And
I definitely had the most growth going through all that pain that I'd had in my entire life.
through just the you're talking
The
about
pain of all that came with the divorce
yeah.
and going through that struggle really produced a lot of growth. So we'll have to talk about that on the next podcast.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think for me as well, it produced this sense of resiliency, a deeper sense of resiliency, a deeper sense of trust in myself, and also this fortitude that says, I'm never gonna let myself. I'm gonna try not to let myself find myself in a situation like this again. Right. So I think it does just kind of build upon itself. So
Yeah. You learn a lot. I love you.
I love you too.